It's why I looked out at our press corps of the Pentagon and called them the Pharisees in the press. It's because they look for every problem.
Well, I'm asking you about
you look for every problem that exists,
Ukraine
and you
has
miss
been militarily defeated.
You missed the
I would
plank.
submit, based on my 9 trips to Ukraine, that is a false narrative that the president's buying.
We are 2 months
Vladimir
into a
Putin.
historic military success in Iran, and you want to call it a defeat. And it's defeatist Democrats like you that cloud the mind of the American people and would otherwise fully support preventing Iran from having a nuclear weapon.
The costs of war include caring for our veterans. We've had an estimate from Mr. Hirsch yesterday that the cost to date in dollars for this war has been $25 billion, which I believe is well below the actual cost based on everything that I've heard, everything available to us in various kinds of settings, and I'm going to ask for a more accurate assessment. But we also know that about 400 service members have been wounded as a result of this war. When they retire, when they come home, their retirement pay will be docked dollar for dollar for every disability benefit dollar they receive. Secretary Hegseth, I'd like your commitment that you will support the Major Richard Starr Act that will eliminate this wounded warrior tax. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Tens of thousands of servicemen and women now are reduced in their retirement pay literally for every dollar of disability benefits they receive.
Well, I appreciate your focus on this issue, and I will tell you of the, you mentioned roughly 400 that have been injured. Thankfully, over 90% are returned to duty. But that doesn't mean they wouldn't have a residual challenge. And we're tracking that at point of injury to ensure that that is noted, even though they're returned to duty.
But what I'd like is your commitment that you will support the Major Richard Starr Act.
As I have said in the past to other organizations, we support the Richard Starr Act.
Thank you. On the issue of cost, Mr. Hurst, does that $25 billion estimate include all of the costs in terms of damage to our bases, the need to replace planes and munitions, and the costs of injuries to our servicemen and women?
Senator, so for the Milcon facilities replacement cost, that's probably the hardest thing to estimate right now because we don't know what our future posture is going to be or the future construction of those bases.
Well, you owe it to us. You're here to ask for appropriations.
Of course.
And I would like a more accurate estimate of what has been done that will require replacement and renovation, as well as the other costs. And I think $25 billion is probably less than half, maybe less than a quarter of the total cost of war, which is the reason why the supplemental request is much higher. So I think you owe it to the American people to give us the straight talk about what the costs have been. Mr. Secretary, I know you have characterized this war as an astonishing military success, to use your words yesterday. But the American people aren't buying it. And I know you feel the American people are seeing through the abstruse stuff that is thrown at them, but one point is irrefutable, which is America never succeeds in war unless the American people are behind it. And if what you're seeing as success now is winning, I would hate to see what losing looks like, because none of the shifting and contradictory objectives of the war so far have been achieved. Likewise, let me ask you, yesterday, the President said that Ukraine has been, quote, militarily defeated. I assume you don't agree with that assessment.
The negative nature in which you characterize the incredible and historic effort in Iran is part of the reason, Senator, why the American people view it the way they do. It's why I looked out at our press corps of the Pentagon and called them the Pharisees in the press. It's because they look for every problem.
Well, I'm asking you about
look for every
Ukraine.
problem
Do you
that
believe
exists,
Ukraine
and you
has been
miss
militarily defeated?
you miss the
I would
plank.
submit, based on my 9 trips to Ukraine, that is a false narrative that the president's
We are
buying
2
from
months
Vladimir
into a
Putin. I
historic
hope that
military success in Iran, and
will
you want to call it a
dispute it
defeat. And it's
because
defeatist Democrats
it
like
is
you
the
that
people
cloud the
of
mind of the
Ukraine
American
who are
people
fighting
and
for their
would otherwise
survival,
fully support
fight no
preventing
help
Iran from having a
the
nuclear weapon.
administration, and they are bravely fighting our fight. And that is the reason that I'm pursuing the Russian sanctions bill, which is bipartisan, along with Senator Graham, and why I hope we will recognize our obligation to release that $400 million, which we've appropriated.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my questions, I'd like to take a moment to highlight the true costs of this war, both for the military and everyday Americans, and the true cost of the president's illegal war with Iran. And since the start of the war, 14 brave U.S. service members have been killed, and more than 400 have been wounded. We've burned through over $25 billion in taxpayer money with no end in sight. And the fiscal year 27 budget request is a massive 42% increase from last year. Hundreds of critical munitions have been expended, and deployments have been extended, directly impacting service members' quality of life, military readiness, and our ability to deter our adversaries. The relationships with our allies, some of our closest allies and partners, have been fractured. And the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, which somehow caught the president by surprise, even though he had to have been warned, is directly contributing to the affordable crisis that Americans are facing. Energy costs are skyrocketing, with the price of gas now at its highest level in almost 4 years. Instability has driven interest rates to its highest level since September of last year. The cost of fertilizer is spiking, which will have a direct impact on the cost of food. This illegal war is driving up costs, undermining readiness, and alienating our allies, with neither a clear rationale for starting this war nor an exit strategy. And when the president was asked how long he'll let this war continue, he said, "Do not rush me." I have a question for General Kane relating to women serving in combat, and I'd like to hear your best military advice. Does the mere fact of women being in combat armed units lower standards or readiness if they meet the physical standards?
Well, ma'am, the standards are set by the civilians. We have examples of women leading well across the joint force. I'll highlight some of our current commanders engaged in the fight in Epic Fury. Specifically, one of our bomb squadrons are led by a extraordinary female leader who's doing great work. And but those standards are set by. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you.
I think your answer is that in fact it does not lower standards of readiness. Second question: should every service member, regardless of gender, be permitted to serve in any role, including the combat arms, if they meet the standards established? Yes or no?
Is that to me, ma'am?
Over the last decade, since combat arms have been open to women, have you personally seen any instance where the standard resulted in a degradation in combat effectiveness?
Apologies, I didn't hear your first question. The people policies are all set by the civilian
I'm
leaders in the
asking you
government.
personally
Could
in
you
this
repeat the question
question.
again? I'm sorry, ma'am.
Over the last decade, since combat arms have been open to women, have you personally seen any instance where the standard resulted in a degradation in combat effectiveness?
Again, I'll highlight that the standards are set by our civilian leaders. Women continue to perform well across a range of MOSs and
Your
jobs and
answer
AFSCs that are out
Our
there.
experience, no. I do need to get to a question for Secretary Hegseth. Prior to your nomination hearing, you said women shouldn't serve in combat armed units. at your confirmation hearing, you reversed course, and, and you basically said as long as the women meet the standards, they should be able to serve. But recently, you ordered a review of the effectiveness of women in combat roles, and I am concerned you are laying the groundwork to reverse the policy allowing women to serve in these units, because right now, current law, if you want to change this policy, current law requires you to submit a report to Congress justifying such a change. So did you order the review to support a potential decision to overturn the policy of having women in combat roles?
We are laser focused on standards. The highest male standard for every combat arms position should be the standard. And 10 years into this, we are reviewing it, which is what the American people would expect. Also, there's nothing illegal about a war that defends the American people and prevents Iran from having a nuclear bomb.
Hegseth, you didn't answer the question, because the reason that you're asking for this review, I think, has to do with your earlier position that you don't think women should serve in combat roles. So now we have this study, and I'd like to ask you,
Senator,
will you reveal the study to the public, to the American people? Will you make the study public?
will you make that study?
Yes or no?
We're doing the study for that very reason, to ensure that
Make the
real
study
science
public.
is applied to this question and not
we
social
appreciate-
engineering like the previous
We
administration.
appreciate your assurance that that will be.
One Senate hearing turned into something much bigger than a debate over numbers. It became a battle over accountability, the true cost of war, and how the American people are being told the story. Senator Richard Blumenthal challenged the Pentagon's claim that the Iran conflict has cost roughly $25 billion. His argument was simple. That figure doesn't include damaged military bases, destroyed aircraft, replacement weapons, or the long-term care for hundreds of wounded American service members. According to Blumenthal, the real price tag could be several times higher. But perhaps the most significant moment came when he secured a public commitment from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to support the Major Richard Starr Act. If passed, the legislation would end what's commonly known as the Wounded Warrior Tax, allowing disabled veterans to receive both their full retirement pay and disability benefits without one reducing the other. For thousands of veterans, that's more than politics. It's a financial lifeline. The hearing then shifted into a heated exchange over the administration's description of the Iran campaign as a historic military success. Blumenthal pushed back, arguing that public support is essential in any war, and questioning whether the administration had truly achieved its stated objectives. He also criticized President Trump's reported assessment that Ukraine had been militarily defeated, calling that view inaccurate based on his own visits to the region. Secretary Hegseth responded forcefully, accusing critics and parts of the media of focusing only on problems instead of recognizing military achievements. Rather than agreeing on the facts, both sides presented two very different interpretations of the same conflict. In the end, this hearing highlighted two major questions. First, are Americans getting the full picture of the financial and human cost of war? And second, can military success be measured only by battlefield results, or does it also depend on transparency, public trust, and long-term consequences? What do you think? Was Senator Blumenthal raising necessary questions about accountability, or was the administration right to defend its record? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth political analysis.